So today I'm going to talk about the deep shadow work that is required of the empath to successfully heal and individuate. Or as my Argentinian friend says, who has been working with narcissists and the victims of narcissism for 40 years, she calls it narcisar. So we're going to talk about what that looks like, to narcisar, to narcissate, to carve yourself out of your environment. Unhealthy empathy is being lost in your environment. It's almost like being a diffused fly on the wall, without a very clear feeling of what your desires are. And why that is obviously so damaging is because if you don't sense who you are and what you want, then you will acquiesce to the desires of the people in your environment. You will acquiesce to their mindset sometimes, that you will acquiesce to their emotional state of being, and most in a very damaging way, acquiescing to their desires. And the reason that's so damaging is because you might not realize what you're doing until your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, where you've been kind of just floating along with whatever comes your way because you haven't carved yourself out of your environment, so you cannot move forward in a way that's authentic to you. So I'm going to start with something that I heard a story yesterday twice, and it reminded me of lessons I've learned in my life. And it was when Jesus drew a line in the sand and said, "Get thee, Satan, behind me." I heard that story twice yesterday. And that's a really important lesson for the empath. If you have attracted serious abuse in your life, you know, the ooey gooey, fuzzy wuzzy, like understanding, compassion, and love is not the medicine that's going to get you out of those situations. In fact, that's often where you hide. Being in a situation that you know is either overtly abusive or is just straight up not right for you. Empaths hide in that. Oh, but let's understand him or her. Let's just understand. And they had a bad childhood. That's a hiding place. Because what's in the shadow here is you have exiled your own desires. You've exiled your own desires. So because you can't cope with that, you spiritualize it. Your ego uses a lot of religious conditioning and spiritual ideas to keep you locked in something that is inauthentic to you. So when Jesus said, you know, people were having a conversation about this, and I've talked about this on my channel, about how I can see beings, I can see the other side, I can see beyond the veil. I've seen my own internal demons, and I've seen other entities that have come to me that are a vibrational match to what I have inside of me, which in large part was a complete lack of boundaries. Okay, having no boundaries has serious consequences in the astral world. So I remember one time when I was alone in a cabin studying for my PhD in this place that's very metaphysical. There's a lot of non-physical activity. I was attacked by a being, a very scary being, and the way that I sent it away was with conviction and with like strength. And I said, "Fucker, be gone." I didn't say it like that, but I said the names of God in Hebrew with that energy, like Jesus said, like drawing a line in the sand, "Satan, get behind me." You know, that's something in the shadow for the empath. It's like conviction and strength. And in the spiritual world, if the unhealthy empathic ego interprets spirituality to mean that you should always be soft, what that unfortunately looks like, you should always be soft and just never be judgmental, meaning never call a spade a spade. And when I say call a spade, I mean admit to yourself that you're in an unhealthy dynamic. What happens is you stay sick, you stay trapped in bad situations. So this energy that story illustrates of Jesus is draw a line in the sand. with the devil, meaning energies that seek to distort, manipulate, and control you. One of the shadows of the empath, one of the tendencies of the empath is because they get lost in their environment, other people define you. It's like you're you're a computer with no program inside. So all the programs, while we're all already susceptible to conditioning and this conditioning of society, like people will try to program you, especially if you have the tendency to subordinate yourself psychologically to someone, meaning you feel inferior. You feel inferior to something, whether it's a partner, I don't know, your parents, your intimate partner, a spiritual teacher. If you have that tendency, then you'll buy into it. You'll buy into what people say about you. It will disturb you. So to heal that, you have to reconnect with your heart and say, like, I know who I am. You know, the reason why the empath tends to heal more so than the narcissist is because the payoff of narcissism is still pretty tasty, right? It's the payoff of that is that you feel powerful, you feel like you're in control, you feel like you're in charge, you feel like maybe you're above others, that you're the smartest person in the room. There's a high in that, but the unhealthy empathy like usually results in chronic illness, serious illness, all kinds of stuff, eating disorders, internalizing, you know, what's going on in your environment without an outlet to let it out of you. The payoff is not so good. So there's a high motivation to heal, which is actually the gift. And I think that what really helps you, right, is to reconnect with your heart and to really, like, first of all, be okay with when you start to wake up to the fact that you've made really disempowered choices and that you've essentially, in some cases, made almost no choices, right? So the indecisiveness is a symptom of the shadow. When you start to realize that you haven't really made any choices, that you're just acquiescing to stuff around you, that can feel very, very deeply painful, almost like one of the deepest pains you can feel, because you wake up and you say, oh my God, like I haven't even been here. I've just been sucked into other people's opinions, desires, agendas. So on the one hand, you have to draw a line in the sand and say enough. And so what happens is when you start to narcissate and when you send the evil away, which is the evil in you that acquiesces, but in the evil on the outside is like all of the egos that constellated around you to reflect back to you your wound are not going to like it when you narcissate. In fact, it's very common that they will flip the narrative and try to paint you as a villain, which that's fine. Who cares what people say about you? If you know that what you're doing is in the interest of like true self-love, like, wait a minute, I've acquiesced my whole life. You know, I have gone along with other people's desires my whole life. For once in my whole fucking life, now I'm spending money the way I want to spend it. I'm spending my time the way I want to spend it. I realize deeply that my internal rhythms and my body is so unique, and so it doesn't fit maybe in working for someone else. It doesn't fit in the way my family wants me to show up for them, right? When you're going through a Kundalini awakening or like a deep healing process, like so often for even years, you know, your body needs to rest so much, and it's really hard to feel like people in your life are expecting things of you that seem very basic that you can't even fulfill for them. It's very common in people that I've worked with and in my life, like, but you can't care what people think. To narcissate, you have to say, fuck that. Like, my body, my health, my well-being is just as important as the fact that you want me to go to somebody's baptism. You want me to drive hours to meet you somewhere. I'm sorry, like, so to narcissist, you have to draw a line in the sand. Like, I know you want to control me with your guilt and with your narrative flipping and with your whatever. You got to draw a line in the sand. You got to draw a line in the sand and say, your life is, you are finally saying that your life is just as important as the lives around you. So a lot of times in spirituality, it's like people really emphasize empathy and compassion as like what you need to grow spiritually. But what an empath needs to grow spiritually is to be able to say no, to create boundaries. I am telling you that the inability to say no is literally metaphysically what you're inviting is even forms of like astral rape. I've seen it. Why would you attract people, for example, that do not respect your sexual boundaries? Even people you're already in partnership with that touch you inappropriately or cross your boundaries. Why would that happen? You know what's happening in the astral world at the same time that it's happening in the physical world? Beings that are feeding on your lack of sense of self, your lack of, it's not even self-respect, it comes before self-respect. It's even the existence of myself as something that has desires and boundaries. Metaphysically, what happens on the other side of the veil is that you invite things that, just like you invite things in the physical world that take advantage of you, you invite things on the other side of the veil that severely drain your energy, that can kill you. So that's why I've said before, like, the inability to say no can literally lead to tragedies. It can lead to rape. Why? Why can it lead to rape? Okay, let's say you're in a situation, maybe it's already an existing relationship where the person has shown signs that they don't respect your physical boundaries. Instead of leaving them, you just acquiesce. You might try to say something, but they don't respect it, so you stay. So what happens is, because they have no desire to change, the pattern will get worse. The pattern will get worse. Eventually, they will cross another line and another line and another line because you didn't get the message. The message from God was, listen, you don't like this, and you're an adult now. When you were a child, you couldn't stop it, but you're an adult now and you can stop it. And I have compassion because I have experienced that saying no can feel like almost a non-option to your consciousness. It can feel deeply frozen inside of you, almost like you're in sleep paralysis. I remember, like, when I was moving through this shadow inside myself, it was so disturbing. Like, I would be in a situation that I didn't want to be in, that felt very wrong to me, and I would experience like this malaise, like this darkness come over my eyes, almost like making me like floaty and disassociated, almost like I had just taken a drug, like hemlock, like it's like, oh my God, I'm exiting my body. I'm floating out of this experience because I haven't figured out that I can say no. This is deep shadow work, guys. People say, yeah, learn to say no, but like people don't really talk about how actually difficult it is and how it can literally feel like you've drinking poison, like you disassociate and that you don't have the option, which is why we have to take responsibility for the things we've attracted in our lives. It's not your fault that somebody sexually assaulted you. It's not your fault. You didn't make them do that to you. However, the psychological mechanism that we need to correct is like, you should tolerate absolutely nothing. No disrespect, right? And, in relationships, there's always going to be challenges and people are going to lose their temper. Getting into fights with people like that, I feel like that's usually part of your growth process, but that's only growth if both people want to come back to their hearts and take accountability and apologize. That's otherwise it's just volatile and unhealthy. So when I say you shouldn't put up with anything, like there's some really non-negotiable things, like, you know, some signs of abuse that I wasn't aware of until now is like, you know, people doing a lot of research on your, you know, I had a situation where somebody kept researching like what my family paid for their house. They kept track of my wardrobe. Like they kept track of things, which, you know, it didn't register to me that that's a form of control until I got to know the person better and I realized, oh my goodness, like that's very obvious. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you might not have ever experienced that before, but it feels off to you. Like, wait a minute, why are you researching my family members? Why are you researching how much money my family makes? Why are you? That felt very weird to me, but I got that hemlock feeling, like that gaslighty feeling, which is part of the shadow work. It's like, I want you to notice that when something feels really off to you, like in a fundamental way, like brakes go off inside of you, that hemlock response of like, maybe, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it's the gaslighting. It's the gaslighting. So we want to learn how to draw a line in the sand. We want to learn how to be very firm with the boundaries. And I want you to recognize when you're gaslighting yourself. Gaslighting yourself literally feels like you just drank poison and all of a sudden your vision is blurry and maybe you start spinning and maybe you start like questioning your sanity. No, sweetie, there's nothing wrong with you. People that research you, people that keep track of your wardrobe, you know, people, that feeling that is clearly not love, okay, that is a red flag. So the deep shadow work that I wanted to talk about here, and I'm going to unpack it so much more because there's so much nuance and depth to this, but one of the things I really wanted to say and illustrated in that story of Jesus is like, it's not always like love and light. Actually, no, it is. You know what? But light, what it looks like sometimes is saying absolutely not. This is not okay with me. This is not okay with me. And you know what? The fact that you actually said that is that you passed the test. That's the test. If somebody's doing something to you, if people are trying to control you, or maybe they're speaking badly about you, or whatever they're doing, crossing your sexual boundaries, okay, if you stood up and said, absolutely not, no more, you draw a line in the sand, whatever that looks like for you, you draw a line in the sand, you pass the test. And that also means that you disengage, right? The shadow aspect of the empath is like, it's hard for them to disengage from like, it's like even when you draw a line in the sand, you're like, well, but what do they think of that? Like, are they hurt? Like, what do they think of that? Like, what do the people around them think? Do people believe me? You can't care about any of that. You have to draw a line in the sand of your own psyche and say, I know what I know, and I have the self-respect to walk away from a situation, and I don't care what anybody thinks about it. Period. This is you carving yourself out of your environment. You can get pulled back into your environment with worry, with guilt, with, low self-worth behavior, of really being super overly concerned about what this person will believe and what this person thinks, and if these people believe you or they don't believe you. At some point, you just have to say, like, you know what? I carve myself out from all of that. And I say, like, I know who I am. I draw a line in the sand and I walk away into my future after I've passed a test. This test is so hard. I had dinner with a girlfriend the other day, and she was born on the same day as me, 6 hours before me. And she's married to a wonderful guy, and I love them. And I asked her, like, because we have so much in common karmically, I said, like, what happened inside of you before you met him? Like, what happened inside of you before you connected with him? And she said, the main thing was I just said no to the things that weren't right for me. That's it. I just said no to what I don't want. And I got really intense and intentional about it. And I disconnected from all of that. And that was a message of God to me, because this has been, what I talk about is stuff that I've struggled with. She just showed up at my house, like out of nowhere. Oh, hey, I'm outside. we had that conversation, and I wanted to share it with you. Like, sometimes all you need to do to manifest something is to just learn that, like, one lesson. And disconnecting from the old, like not talking to people that really don't belong in your future, that's really important for you. So I hope this was helpful. I'm going to keep unpacking the shadow of the empath, the deep, deep shadow work of the empath. I know how painful this can be. It has, it can lead you into dangerous situations. It could lead you into all kinds of chaos. And really the antidote is simple: saying no. Saying no when you want to say no, saying no at a much earlier stage than you end up saying no when it spirals out of control. Right? It can feel difficult, but it's kind of like when a little kid is learning, like in the shallow end, and they're so scared putting their feet down, but then they put their feet down and they're like, oh, I'm safe. So anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a beautiful day.